Okay, want to introduce the interview?
This is our interview with Jim. Mark and he, as you will find out, go back quite a ways, back to the webzine. I started listening after we talked to a lot of his more recent solo stuff. It is also fantastic.
Yep.
So he
He's a
had
good
some
guy, Jim.
great stories. So let's get into it.
Yeah, right before we started, about 10 minutes ago, I was listening to that ad libidub. Remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Rare.
Yeah,
Not
you
many
gave
people
me
write
that
about
when I came to visit. The Ray Pettibone artwork, and it's kind of like isn't there like a comedy thing on there? I didn't get to it, but isn't there some on there you guys making fun of Kiss or something?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We used to do all kinds of stuff like that. I worked at an independent record store in Hollywood at that time, before we really got freed of our day jobs after Henry.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just saw all the, indie music that was coming out and all the local bands that were putting out 7 inches and different CD singles and stuff. And I just thought, well, we can do that too. We wanted to be on Sony, but we had a lot to say and a lot of music coming out of us. So we did some of those. Well, actually, Ad Libidub is actually later, right? That's Matt Techu, I think.
Yeah, I thought that was like '04 or something like that, I thought.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. You're right. You're right. I get mixed
Yeah.
up now. I haven't heard
No,
that
it's
for a long
okay.
time. I recorded that myself on reel
Yeah,
to
it's
reel
it's
4 track.
mostly instrumental, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
this show was kind of born out of his webzine because his ex-wife had made him shut it down and he kept talking about it and talking about it. And I was like, for Christ's sake, we could do a podcast.
There
Yeah,
you go.
exactly. Yeah.
And it's kind of the way of the world right now. I mean, I watch so many podcasts and, mostly YouTube just because I like watching people's faces too. And so I don't listen as much, but all my friends do. And I know how popular it is. So it's kind
Yeah,
of
a lot of
cool. It's
people get
almost
their
like the new radio. I used to
yeah,
love,
yeah.
listening to the radio when I was a kid, but I mean, we don't even have I mean, you can go to an internet station or whatever for your phone, but scrolling through a dial, kind of miss those days.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we don't even have a radio in the car. We just have the Bluetooth and, we
Yeah,
just
which is great too, and Sirius XM is great. So there's so many options.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I was 15 now, growing up, I
Oh, I
wouldn't know what
know.
to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, what we just found out the other night, we were talking to this guy, Danny, and he was he has a band, Gentlemen Rogues,
Hmm.
and he was telling me he actually made a little bit of money from being, on these radio platforms.
Satellite radio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
satellite radio, which I didn't realize.
Yeah, 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 for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. His song getting played on satellite radio was way more money than he would have gotten streaming,
That
which
makes
is
sense.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
Streaming
was
sucks. I mean, I love streaming, but it's really hard for the artist. And then as artists, we get, your Spotify for the month or your Apple Music for the month, and it's almost you're made to look at these emails that you get as like, wow, look how many people listen to my stuff, and then the pay comes through, and it's like, wow, But no, it's great. It's just different than selling records and physical
Did you hear
product.
about the Did you hear about the Weird Al thing last year with the whole thanks for the sandwich?
Oh yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah. Because he got like for millions and millions of streams, he got like $13 or something.
I know, I know. Peter Frampton was the same way.
Oh, that's
Like,
right. You Peter Frampton too. Yeah, yeah.
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 that's
It's
awesome.
crazy. Yeah.
Are you still in Maryland? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
My
totally.
parents live in Elkton, Maryland. We probably talked about that before, but
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Cecil County, yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep,
we just
exactly.
hit Maryland Death Fest this year and then Maryland Doom Fest. So it's been a
Oh, cool.
festival year so far.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I never asked you this, but like when did you start playing guitar originally? And was it like were you self-taught? Like can you take us back to when you first got started in music?
How
Well,
old were you?
I mean, it's kind of all before I can remember. My dad had a country band that played on the weekends, and the band would rehearse at the house. So I was immediately drawn to the Beatles and rock and roll, even though I was immediately drawn to things that came out in the 60s. I was born in 1968. So when I'm 3, I was, in love with Paul McCartney and Elton John and Jackson 5. And my dad was playing country music, which I looked at as kind of adult music or kind of nerdy or whatever. because all the guys in the band were 27 or whatever. And so there was always music around, and my dad always had guitars, and I just picked it up. And there were definitely some things that I learned from watching my dad play and watching his band play, formations and things and strumming, I guess, techniques. But I didn't really think about it. And then once I started seeing rock bands play the Beatles or the Stones, I realized, oh, they're playing different ways than my dad. And so I went that way. So, I was, by the time I was, I don't know, 5 or 6, I was probably like helping my dad figure out chords of country songs that he wanted to learn. I was like, oh no, you're missing the whole middle part there. There's a B minor that you didn't do. So yeah, I just got it really early and was in love with music, and I loved to play everything. I even had a drum kit when I was a kid, but always went back to the guitar and singing for writing purposes, probably.
When did you go out to the West Coast, like officially?
When I was 19,
Okay.
after I got out of high school, I made a trip here for 2 weeks and checked it out. And was like, yep. Have a second cousin that lives in Riverside, California, and he let me stay there until I found an apartment. And I don't know, it was another one of those things where I just felt like I wanted to go where the action was and where all my favorite musicians lived and where the music was based out of. And at the time, California was just, it was like what I saw on TV, be it Chips or American Bandstand or whatever. And then to come out here and realize that the weather is like this every day, sunny and hot every day. So, and the Beach Boys and all that kind of stuff. So, still here.
No.
Were you scared when you just moved to another coast and didn't know of a job or what you were gonna do? Or
I would have said no then, but now thinking about it now, it's just like, yeah, what was I thinking? I remember I bought a van from a schoolmate who knew that I was moving, and his dad had a Dodge van that he sold me for $200, and we had to replace the motor among other things. So I played in a top 40 band. My dad's friend played guitar in a top 40 wedding band, and the guitar player couldn't make the summer gig. So I played those shows and had enough money to get the van going. And then I came here with $1,000 in my pocket, knowing that I had a couch to sleep on or whatever. But as soon as I got here, I had to find something to make money. And the first gig was, there was a free LA newspaper called LA Weekly. And if you had a van, they would hire you. So I did that. I went up and down Sunset Boulevard and dropped off, entertainment newspapers all down the strip. And then I got the job at Tower Records and got to meet a lot of people that were into music like me, and just being around the environment of selling music. And then, not to mention, it was the one on Sunset Strip, so every day crazy celebrities came in, and that was exciting. Coming from Delaware and seeing all your heroes, or never knew who was going to come through the door, and it was wild. And it was a great time, like 1988. So it was prime Sylvester Stallone and Eddie Murphy and David Bowie, and every day was crazy. So again, another reason why I'm still here, and even to this day, I've been playing for years now with Daniel Lanois, the producer, musician, and we've been talking. Are we sick of LA? Should we go to Memphis or Nashville or somewhere and just see what happens? And then we realize all the opportunities that are here and the things that happen because we're in LA. So it still happens. I never know where I'm going to be or what's going to be on the agenda next. And if you're not available, then you're overlooked. So it's crazy as any other place, but I still like it.
Well, how soon, like when you moved out to the West Coast, were you already like writing songs at that point, or did that come later?
No, no, for sure. My grandfather died when I was 15 or something, I think. And then when I turned 18, I found out that he gave all of us grandkids $1,000 each or something like that. So I I bought a that reel to reel tape recorder, the 4 track, and that was my idea to write songs and try to go that route. I've been playing in bands in high school and stuff, but that wasn't even that exciting to me. I thought if I could get to LA and pass around some songs because I liked all different kinds of music. So my songwriting was, not just one thing, which maybe it still isn't, maybe that's good or bad, but I was already coming up with songs. Funny story I might have told before, but it's funny. I reunited a friendship with a kid that I went to grade school with, and I'm talking preteen, and we would hang out after school. And he said that one day I said, "Hey, do you want to write a song?" And he was like, "What? What is this guy talking about?" So it was the Beatles, Beatle damage again, John Lennon, Paul McCartney. Just that's it wasn't a direct thing like, "Hey, I want to be like the Beatles," but just those creations of writing the best songs that you can.
Yeah.
Do you have
And
a
I,
way of starting? Like, do you start with like the
well,
music or lyrics? Do you write stuff down or just record things?
everything, yeah, all those. And at first, I thought you meant for starting writing songs because when I first started writing songs, I'm sure there's hundreds of terrible songs, but yeah, yeah, it just keeps going, and you find different ways. And I love voice memo on my phone, but I still have a notebook. Every time I fill up a notebook, I can't wait to get another notebook because I like writing lines down that 2 days later I cross out, but it helps me put a story together and put it together like that. And the more songs you write, the more you have to find subjects to write about, or you can't just keep writing the same things, or you don't want to repeat a line that you said before, So, and then more recently, if I come up with a good idea to start, I let it alone, and then I take walks without an instrument and just have the basic idea that I had in my head and just think where it should go naturally instead of me sitting down with a guitar and shuffling around a bunch of chords. I actually just let it take itself. And that works sometimes too, because all of a sudden I have a bridge that I would have never thought of if I would have the guitar in front of me. And then my last solo stuff, I um, was house sitting in Silver Lake at this big house there, and he has pianos, and I wrote a bunch of stuff on piano, which was really fun too, because that's kind of I can play some keyboards, but I'm not a player. But when nobody's home and I have a piano in front of me, then I can
Yeah.
find some weird combinations.
Yeah.
Again, different than the guitar because you have so many choices and you have 10 fingers instead of 5 on the or 4 on the guitar neck
Yeah.
to play with.
Yeah.
So it's all different kinds of stuff. There's always a couple songs brewing. I've been recording for the past couple years with Phil Jones, this great drummer and producer, and he wants to do a couple new songs. So I've got 2 that I just keep every day. I kind of look at it and go, "Nah, not yet. They're coming." So I'm patient with the songs now too, and because I think a song is good a year from now, even if you don't find the way to finish it yet. So if it's good, it's going to come back and it's
Right.
say, "Hey, what happened to that one melody that I had that I never used?" Or that happens a lot too. And again, you always want to make sure you're not stealing a Billy Joel melody, or it's something that you already wrote before. Like, "Hey, that's
Right.
pretty good." Oh wait, that's an old Mother Superior, whatever.
Yeah.
But
Speaking
they
of
also
which,
call that style, I guess.
when did how did you come together with the guys to form Mother Superior? Like, how did all that happen?
Well, Marcus and I grew up in Delaware, and he came out to LA at the same time as me,
Mhm.
and again with the idea of like doing something in music. And Jason, the drummer, I met him when I started working at Tower Records. He came, started working there right after me. I think he worked at Tower in Sacramento, moved to LA, transferred to the LA store, and he had a Kiss belt buckle on his jacket. Like, you know, he took it off the belt and put it on his jacket. So we started talking about Kiss because at that time I had rediscovered Kiss. I think there was a greatest hits record that came out then, and they were playing it in the store. And I just thought, oh yeah, these guys were good, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we got together to jam Kiss songs the very first time. We rented out a little rehearsal place and just played the first Kiss album, and went into Hotter Than Hell and Dressed to Kill as much as we could, you know. And of course, at some point, it turned into, hey, I got a song, you know, not that night, but after we got together a few times, we started playing some original stuff. And then we sounded like a band, you know, and friends would come by the rehearsals. We had three different rhythm guitar players before we decided to become a trio. All three guys worked at record stores with us, and we just could never find the right guy that would, you know, was as committed as we were, and that was, you know, that would show up to rehearsals. And
Right.
so same thing happened there. We just every time the fourth guy didn't show up, the three of us would still jam. And then working in a record store, you also get to explore back catalog of things that you couldn't afford when you were a kid. You know, I like Fleetwood Mac, but I couldn't buy every Fleetwood Mac record when I was 13, you know. So you pick your favorite bands. So when you work at a record store, you have, you know, free reign over listening to all that stuff. And because of Jason, also the drummer, we were into Free and Jimi Hendrix and Humble Pie. Again, like all my musical tastes, I'm always like a decade behind. I'm always trying to catch up, I guess. But that's what kind of started us on the less pop songwriter type stuff, and putting a heavy rock band together. And once again, Kiss was a big influence on that. But without a second guitarist, we realized, you know, we could turn it up and be like Cream, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
So
Trios. Yeah. Yeah.
and all of a sudden we had gigs, and, you know, people were digging it. And every time we thought nothing was happening, something would, you know, another step or whatever. Did that for a long time.
Yeah.
And then you were part of the Rollins band. What are your kind of best and worst memories from that period?
He kind of did the Fleetwood Mac to you guys. He kind of,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he did with,
True.
He kind of said, you know what, you can just, I'll absorb you into my.
Yeah, you know, it was amazing. And I don't really have any worst memories because it was always really fun and first class. I guess worst would be just the he didn't want our band to break up, so we were doing both. And that was a little bit hard just because we were getting paid nicely by Henry, and then when we weren't with Henry, it was every man for himself kind of thing. So there was always the, should we be devoting more time to this or more time to this, and don't forget about this, you know. So conflicts, I think, were the only thing. But personally, and like pride and everything, it was, you know, really a great time. And I worked with so many people that I'm still friends with because of Henry. And yeah, and I guess the only other worst thing is after it was all done a few years ago, he did a podcast and talked about when we made the first record for DreamWorks. He didn't tell us this at the time, but he revealed it in this interview that DreamWorks hated the album, and they're like, "It's a rock and roll record. What are we going to do with this?" And
Was
Henry
it
stood up.
nice? Was that the record?
No, Get Some Go Again.
Get Some Go Again. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. They were like so not into it, and he never told us that, you know, which is kind of cool because that would have changed the way that we were on the road.
It was protecting you guys.
Yeah. And, you know, he also stood up for it, and he was like, "We're doing this, you know, that's how it is." You know? So in some ways, that's pretty great too. I wish that record was on vinyl. That's something that regret, because it was in
Yeah.
that time where, you know, CDs were so popular and only certain things were coming out on vinyl at the time.
That live disc you put out, the only way to know for sure with him.
Oh
I always
yes.
wondered, I love that. I love that record. And I always wondered, was he pretty loose with you guys in interpreting the old stuff? Did he kind of just let you go? Because it sounds like he does on that record. Because you
Yeah.
some of the arrangements are changed and stuff. It's very bluesy. It's very you guys,
Yeah.
and I think it's very cool. But it seems like he probably was pretty loose.
He was. He, you know, I think we would always get together before we got with Henry, maybe at night, and try to play by ourselves, so we weren't throwing it, you know, having Henry listen to us try it 6 times in a row before we found something, you know. So
Yeah.
we would get together and Mother Superior out things or
Yeah.
whatever. And I guess that's just kind of the way I play. I think sometimes, like in my head, no black flag, pun intended, in my head, I always feel like I'm duplicating exactly what the other guy's doing, even when it came to doing Black Flag songs as well. But you know, then when I hear it back, I'm like, oh, I totally pulled me on it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
you know. But I guess that's what makes it easier or whatever. But yes, he was all, and he was such a fan of what we did and the sound, and he always wanted me to just be explosive. He always talked about the guitar player in Big Brother and the Holding Company, the Janis Joplin band, first band, and I don't even know the guy's name, but you know, he would always reference that, like the way that guitar just comes out, you know. So, yeah, he it was always loose, and he was always, it was either he was into it or he wasn't into it. There was never any kind of medium. So if he was grooving, then our job was done.
Yeah.
And we
Were
always
you
try to use respect as well for the other musicians, and you know, because when we got pulled into being the second generation Rollins band, I'm sure those guys probably hated us because we never met them or anything. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, they were, you know, they had no idea that that was going to happen. And he told them one way or another. I think it was early email days, and it might even been like, "Sorry guys, I'm moving on." But finally, when we got to meet those guys years later, everything's cool or whatever. But I always try to at least give respect to their original music and the whole brand that they started, you know, because we were the second generation.
Yeah.
were you surprised when he was just like, "All right, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore." And did you think he would come back and do something else? Because he's pretty much stayed away from music.
Yeah, well, if I remember right, we did the double live record, and that was thought was going to be the very last thing. And we played in Japan, I think, and then it was kind of like he kind of let us know, like, I don't even know what to do next, so I'm not going to do any music. And then maybe 4 to 6 months later, I got the call about the West Memphis Three tribute thing, benefit thing with Black Flag songs with different singers. And then Henry said, "Well, if we do this record, then we have to go out and tour these songs." And I remember he said to me, he's like, "I need you." And I said, "Okay, I'm in, you know, 100%." So we did that one final thing of Black Flag songs, which is kind of cool because it was full circle. And definitely at the end of that, we knew that that was it. Like, you know, I remember he would always talk about how old he was. Like, he's like, "I don't want to be the old punk rocker guy on stage," you know. And he wasn't even old then,
Right.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, I guess his spoken word took off so well, and and then he doesn't have to split the money with other people, and I mean, so I get it. I get it.
Oh, absolutely. He has a bus by himself with a road manager, what tour
He could
manager.
like do pull-ups in the bus or whatever, like
Yeah. And you know, music is hard, and it's true. If you know Henry's style, he can't go on stage and excuse me, he can't go on stage and sit in a chair and recite stuff.
yeah.
You know, it's so intense. You know, and I never sweated so much as I did in those days. And then when he had Mother Superior open for Rollins band, it was like I would come off stage after doing a Mother Superior set, soaking wet, and then change to another clean black shirt, and then go do it again, you know. And
God.
and then the Rollins set was even more intense, and you never knew what was going to happen, and the crowds were always so great and so appreciative, and that was the idea with Rollins Band, was to be so intense that you blow people's minds, you know,
Yeah.
bottom line. So that's, we always knew we had to do that. I was sick one time in Russia. We did like a UK tour, and then we went straight to Russia, and somewhere between Scotland and Russia, I caught some bug or something, and they put me in the hotel room, and had ear infection. We went out that night, and I was like, what am I going to do? Be lame? We rocked that Russian show more than ever, you know what I mean? So it was always everybody giving it 100%.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about Wayne Kramer, of course. I mean, how did you come to work with him? And now that I know his passing was kind of surprise to a lot of
Oh,
us.
it's so sad. Yeah, it's so sad. We had shared the same birthday.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cool.
We still do, I guess. Met him through Henry. He's on Get Some Go Again, LA Money Train. And I was telling somebody about this story not too long ago, but Wayne produced our 13 Violets record and a couple other things around that time, a single, and he wanted to go on tour with us, and we said we would open for him. Then he wanted the band to be, he's like, well, since we're going out, do you guys want to just play in my band? And for whatever reason, Marcus and Jason said no. I think it was too close to the Rollins thing, and they didn't want to have another watered down version of whatever anybody would expect or whatever. But then I said, well, cool, I'll play in Wayne's band. So we did that tour, and I got to do double duty and really get to know him and drive around New York City and Detroit. We went to Detroit with Wayne Kramer driving, and he was, pointing out street corners and giving us all this information. And we met, Rob Tyner's daughter after one of the shows. Really cool stuff like that. And Wayne was great in the studio. He took Mother Superior to another place. We were so used to going into a room and turning our amps on and putting microphones in front of them. And, Wayne was doing different psychedelic sounds and taking each song as a different production idea. Like some of the songs on that record are one from another, completely different, And he liked our soulful side. So there were, I sing in falsetto on that album for the first time. And before that, it was like, oh, I can't. Lemmy would never sing falsetto, you know what I mean? But then it kind of opened up that door for us to. And then he put out our Sin record on his record label, Muscle Tone. So that was cool too.
Yeah, because some of your albums, Sin and Moanin', they're not on Spotify. Is that record company related or?
No, I'm aware of this, and I'm actually in charge of all that stuff. And it was brought to my attention, and I think it was just Mother Superior got really lucky because there was a fan that was in the early days of iTunes, and he immediately got us a nice digital distribution deal, The Orchard. And I think that it was just they were missed in the time, or at the time that those records were posted through The Orchard. Some of those records, Monin was on a French label, and we might have still been under that label at the time. And it's just me, but I noticed that those two missing records are on Apple Music and not Spotify. Okay. So I just kind of left it at that, but I guess I should resubmit them for the Spotify thing, because it's just funny. It's a whole different way of looking at it these days.
Yeah,
I hope that made sense.
You were always a huge vinyl person, and I remember when I came out there to see you guys, I remember we were listening to Bee Gees, pre-disco Bee Gees. Remember?
Oh yeah, nice.
And then you gave me the tour of the Sunset Strip because I had never been, and you were doing the same thing Wayne Kramer did for you. You were showing me this was recorded there. Remember that? Yeah, that was great. And we met at Amoeba Records, and I bought Sparks Indiscreet, and you said that's Henry's favorite Sparks record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
remember the
actually,
first time you ever heard that. Yeah.
but
That's
anyway, but
cool.
my question is, how come none of the Mother Superior stuff ever came out on vinyl?
Well, yeah, I guess at the time it was just, it was the kind of dead period for vinyl. And
It was.
I'm surprised a few of them didn't, especially when we had little label deals. Like a lot of
Right,
times,
right.
the first couple records we did ourselves and put out ourselves, we had good distribution through Tower Records because we had all those connections. But yeah, by the time that we signed with Triple X in 1999, I think, and they just never put that on vinyl. And same thing with the French labels too. There's one compilation that came out in France on vinyl, but it was just that time period of,
Yeah.
it,
It really
somebody
was
would have,
like the
somebody would
dead
have a
years.
closet full of those records if they would have pressed them up at that time.
Yeah, like
I would
98 to 05, even a lot of big releases never came out on vinyl because it was just
It's
like,
true.
yeah,
Yeah. Some of them are just coming out for the first time on vinyl now,
yeah,
which is kind of,
yeah.
and it's never too late for Mother Superior as well, So if anybody's watching this and has any connections, let's
That's
do it.
right. Yeah.
Got to get that back out there. Reissue. We should do a reissue.
Yeah, it would be really cool. And it's even changed so much because my last couple solo records have been on vinyl. And back in the day, I think it was at least a 500 copy minimum, which not only costs a lot more, but then you got to store all that stuff. But these days, you can get 100 and 200 copies of vinyl, like, small pressings, no problem, which is
cool.
kind of cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it sounds like you're a workhorse from like doing double duty with Mother Superior and then Rollins. But how was that crazy Sparks 21-day spectacular? Were you like falling over by the end?
Well, again, I was a Sparks fan. I joined the fan club when I was 15 in Delaware, and I was just a fanatic. So when I did get to meet those guys through the producer Tony Visconti, who worked on a couple Mother Superior things, the first thing that happened was they were looking for a lead guitar player that could play their 1974 album in its entirety, which was their "Come On to My House" was one of their biggest records. And Morrissey from the Smiths, he wanted them to do the whole album in London at this Meltdown festival he was putting together. So Russell told me about that in an email after we met each other, and I said, "Hey, if you need any help, let me know." And I went to his house in Beverly Hills and played along with the record. He's like, "Wow, you do know the record?" And I said, "Oh man," I said, "I used to, Sparks is what I was playing along with in my bedroom, growing up. And I always loved the weirdness and the weird guitar and everything. And there were so many different guitar players with them through the years, so that was the other thing too. But when the idea for they had a 21st new album, and then they were going to do their 20 albums, and then the 21st album on the final night, he called me and he just said, we can't think of anybody else that could do this, So they were looking at me when we were rehearsing. Does that happen 2 times, or is that an A minor or B flat? And it's like, wait, you guys wrote these songs,
Wow.
So I was, I had to do some work, and the fortunate thing is I knew how to play all the songs in my head. Like I knew the songs in my head. So at least I had that. Like the other guys that played in the band, and it kind of like split. One guy did half, one guy did the other half. The drummer played most of the shows. Me and the Mail Brothers are the only ones that did all 21 nights. And it was crazy. It was so much fun though. And then you had just the legion of fans that came out for the shows. A few people saw all 21, and then, some people would come and go, but you would just meet all these different people every night, and Sparks fanatics, and especially when you had a good night, that was, you did a good job. But, same thing, you go to bed, we would wake up, I would rehearse a little bit, drink coffee, and just like look at my notes. We'd go to a sound check at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, play the whole album at sound check one last time, and then showtime, play the songs one time, and then go back to the hotel and throw that away and start over on another album the next day. So it was about 200 plus songs.
Wow.
I was so disappointed that you weren't in the documentary.
I
was
was
like,
too.
I was like, Patton Oswalt, what the hell's he doing in this? It should be
Yeah.
Jim.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Well, I actually got an email from the producer saying that he wanted to do an interview and we would set it up. And then Sparks played downtown at the Ace Hotel or someplace, I think. And I went to the show, and Russell's girlfriend said, he's here and he's got a room. You want to go sit down and talk to him? And so I did. And it was after a show. And the interview was just like, how does it feel seeing Sparks when you used to be up there playing? And it was like, oh, yeah. So I felt like there's no real connection. So when I left that night, I thought, that's not making the documentary. But, there's a couple clips. If you look for my gold Les Paul guitar, it pops up like maybe 4 or 5 times. And,
Okay.
real quick clip.
I'll look for it now. I'll go back and look
Yeah. There's one right at the beginning. In the first like 2 minutes, there's a quick clip and you see my guitar. And if you pause it.
Now I want to say weren't you on the sessions for Hello Young Lovers?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of guitar on that record. Was that mainly because of you? I mean, compared to the ones before and after, there's a lot of guitar.
Oh yeah, well that was Dean Menta as well. But yeah, when I first started playing with Sparks, it was Dean Menta who played with Faith No More, and it was me and him together, and that was really great when we had both of us playing, because he's a great player too. And then not during the 21 Nights, but I did a whole bunch of Sparks shows with Josh Klinghoffer, who was in the Chili Peppers, and now he's playing with Pearl Jam, and he's a great guitar player too. But we played dueling guitars for a while, and that was fun. But then he was playing with Gnarls Barkley when the 21 Nights came up, so he didn't play with us then. But I always liked Sparks were always great when they had 2 guitar players, like the mid 70s and sometimes in the 80s as well.
Yeah.
But I love those guys, And Steve Nister, who did most of the drums on those 21 shows, he's still playing with them now. He's the longest running Sparks member ever.
Wow.
And I just got, too many other things started happening, and I couldn't, schedule wise, it just stopped working out. But I did get an email from Russell not too long ago saying he missed my guitar playing. So hopefully down the line soon we'll do some more stuff.
Was there a point where you kind of looked at where Mother Superior was and you looked at all the session work you're getting and you kind of just made the decision to just focus on that? Did that kind of happen?
Kind of. It gets deep, but yeah, I started, Daniel Lanois, who I've been playing with for 20 years, he wanted to cut his band down to a trio, and I started playing bass for him, and that led to me doing a tour with Emmylou Harris, and Mother Superior was still playing together, and it was just getting harder to keep that going because we did 10 records or 9 records or whatever, and you're trying to be the same band and not do anything too different. So it was a little stifling like that, and talk about, me trying to keep doing different styles and things. When you're in a band, everybody has their go-to place, and it starts to kind of start repeating a little bit, So I would come back from those tours with Daniel and Emmylou, and I had a choice basically to, go pay for another Mother Superior session and make another record that, would be kind of the same thing, or maybe make my own, do something on my own, and not even thinking about ending the band or anything, but I guess it kind of led to that. Just the more, and it's not anything bad, it was just the more freedom that I had, the more it was like, I don't really want to go back, And Jason, the original drummer, quit the band. He had a a family, 2 kids, and it was too hard for him. And we had a second drummer, Matt, who was great, you know, but again, the reason that I started playing in the band was because my friendship with Jason, and we would, like I said, the Kiss connection and all that kind of like,
Right.
let's, you know, and then by the time Matt came in, there was a little bit of like, I'm responsible to take care of these guys, and, you know, when are we going back to Spain? Because we had a following there, you know, and which is amazing, you know, but we can only do that like once a year. And, you know, it just started to kind of go in, round and round in a circle. And just, I was, you know, even more scared to death to kind of walk away from the band. But as soon as I did, it was like, this is so much better. Now I can do whatever I want and, you know, make whatever kind of music. And then my friends missed the band Mother Superior, and that led to Motor Sister with Scott Ian and Johnny from the Cult and Joey from Armor Saint and Pearl. So we've made 2 records for Metal Blade, and I get to do that. So, you know, the riff rock.
Were you surprised? Did that just kind of come out of nowhere, like Pearl a Day just bringing you
Called
up?
you up
type
and
of
be like,
thing?
let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we did a bunch of stuff together, and me and Pearl wrote a lot of songs together for her records and stuff. We still are. We're working on new stuff right now. But yeah, well, actually, it was Scott Ian's 50th birthday party. He just had his 60th birthday party this past New Year's. His birthday's New Year's Eve. And on his 50th, he called me and said, you know, I want to play Mother Superior songs with you singing and my friends playing. All my friends that love your band will learn, you know, 12 songs and we'll play them at my house. So we did that, and people from Metal Blade Records were there, and they were like, let's make a record of this, you know. So that was Scott Ian's favorite 12 favorite Mother Superior songs that he chose from our albums. And that's what ended up being the first Metal Blade Motor Sister record. And if the guys from Mother Superior didn't hate me before that, after that, they sure did. Because, you know, but I mean, it didn't take anything away from them or any credit or anything. It was just, they weren't very happy to, you know, see it happen for whatever reason. And you know, I remember saying to them, like, it can only be a good thing in the long run. You know, we're not playing right now, and this is an opportunity that I have, and I'm going to take it, you know. And then that led to the last album, which was all brand new songs that I got to write, which was so exciting because since I've been making music under my own name, I haven't played with as many people that can play with that much power, you know, almost heavy metal power like Scott Ian, you know. So the idea of writing a bunch of new songs where I could store up a bunch of cool guitar riffs and make sure that it was a fast moving rock and roll record. So between that and my last solo album, Through My Eyes last year, you know, it's been pretty cool, like to kick back and go, wow, I've written a lot of songs in the past couple of years.
Yeah. We were your biggest fans, and God, I want to say like around that 13 Violets record. I mean, that was when The Darkness hit big, and Queen had Paul Rogers singing, so they had more of a bluesy edge. I was like, this is it. Mother Superior's taking off. This is the time. And the album was so good. I was just, I don't know. You don't know the music industry. You just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, it's true. I have a couple, you know, funny memories of that record just because we always kind of had that feeling that you just described, like every time, like when we joined with Rollins, it was like, oh my God, this is it. Well, now we're gonna, you know, and then you know, something else happened. It's like, oh, maybe this is it or whatever. But 13 Violets was you know, released internationally, and it connected us to Daniel Lanois, who came to see Rollins band. He was still working with U2, producing U2 at the time, and he came to see Rollins band. He loved us, and 13 Violets came out in France, and it was in the European Rolling Stone magazine, not the American. They reviewed it in the European version, and they gave it a great review. Said we sound like Led Zeppelin with a full erection. And you know,
nice. I like that.
So
I have a feeling that Plant had a full erection most of the time.
Yeah, for sure. That's what happens when you get on those festival stages.
That's right.
But
Uh,
Daniel was interviewed in that same European Rolling Stone magazine and was sent the issue like the day before we went to his house for the first time. So, there it was in print. He was like, "Did you guys see this?" And we didn't even know about it, and things like that. And then going to my hometown record store that I grew up going to with my brother, and they had 13 Violets in stock at that record store in Delaware, just being like,
that's so cool.
wow.
Yeah.
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 And again, Wayne Kramer, after Wayne passed, me being in charge of our digital discography and everything, I get all the paperwork, and 13 Violets got a lot of response over the past couple months, like a lot of new listeners, obviously because of the Wayne connection, but that was good to see.
I wanted to ask you, wasn't Joey Vera part of the Motor Sister thing? Didn't he play
He
bass
is.
or something?
He
Okay.
does. Yes.
He's another very busy man.
And Joey was also,
Kind of runs Metal Blade, doesn't he? Kind of.
his wife, yes.
Okay, yeah.
She just
Have you
became-
ever heard? I just wanted to ask you, so because it reminds me of you guys a little bit. I heard a podcast where Joey Vera was talking about when he was an Armored Saint and he signed
Yes.
to Chrysalis, and Chrysalis told they wanted to go to Europe, and Chrysalis was like, no, you just stay in the U.S. No, just L.A., New York, Texas, just there's a big thing coming up in Oklahoma. And the band was like, okay, I guess, we're on a major label. And they didn't get out to Europe until like the early 2000s or something.
Wow.
It's so hard to believe, You
They're
hear that.
going right now. They're in Europe until August 18th. So they're still living the dream. Still, they have a new record.
Yeah. I just thought that was fascinating that they said, no, Europe's not interested. I'm like, well, Kerrang said
something else. I mean, when we had 2 records on that French label and they did really well, and then the guy in Paris, he was going more Americana, and we handed in Moanin', another big rock record, and he said, "I love it, but I'm not doing any more rock records." So he handed us over to this other French label, and they put that out in Europe. And this guy was, at some point we're on the road, and he said, "I'm not going to put out your next album unless I own part of your publishing."
Oh,
and I said, "Well, that's not." He said, "Well, I said, "That's not going to happen." And he said, "Well, then you owe me a record, and I'm putting it out, and I won't promote it or whatever." It's like, "Oh, great. Yeah, let's make a record that means nothing to you and you're not going to do anything with." And so we kind of walked away. And of course, we get all these crazy emails from the guy or whatever, saying, "You owe me a record," or whatever. But the very last show that we did on that tour, he made a point of showing up in the tour, and all the promo CDs that he gave us to sell on the tour, we were paying him in cash backstage, like, paying the record label to, it was insane. Some record label guys are just doing it for the wrong reason.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, should we play our game?
Yep.
All right, we play a game on the show. It's 5 random questions with Stace. That's me.
Okay,
so I have 100 questions in front of me. So I want you to pick 5 numbers that will correspond to the questions you answer.
Wait, say that again?
I have 100 questions in front of me.
Yes.
Numbered 1 through 100. So I want you to pick 5 numbers, and those will be the 5 questions that you'll answer.
Okay. Let's go 5, 25, 27. It's my lucky number. Hopefully. 56 and 68.
Right. Number 5. Have you ever tripped and fallen in front of a crowd?
Yes. In Spain. Once. And it wasn't a trip as it was really bad dancing. Like it was a solo or something. And I just got into it and try to do some move, and I slipped, and it was super embarrassing, but nobody cared. But yeah, that and that's, it's a major thing. Like I am always aware when I'm on stage, like find your footing and don't do anything stupid. To this day, it's always kind of like nice to do a sound check because you get to check out the stage first and you know what you're doing. I won't mention any names, but just this past year, I was on tour with a musician, and we finished the set, and then we were going to go out and take a bow, and there was in front of the stage there were like two big steps, like one big step down and then one to the crowd or whatever. And he said, let's go out to the front. So we went on this, over this big step, and I hopped down, and I thought, okay, when you go back, leap up, like, don't fall, that was already on my mind. And we took our bow, and I leaped up like a champion, and my friend fell. And he was like,
Oh,
oh, yeah. And, he got right back up, and he goes, that was part of the show. But, I was already thinking that, like, I saw that coming, kind of.
Yeah.
All right, we're up to 25. Do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
Introvert, for sure. I mean, I like entertaining, and I like the fact that, I can come up with some songs and make people think they sound pretty good or whatever. But if I had my choice, I would just play records at home all day and search YouTube for rare Beatles videos.
Listen to pre-disco Bee Gees, right? Yeah.
And pre-disco Bee Gees, always. I just saw a clip where it was 1970 Bee Gees, and it was Robin Gibb singing a lead vocal, and he's really into it, and some teenage girl runs on stage and just attacks him or whatever. He kind of freaks out, like, he's like super afraid of, but yeah, well, that's never happened to me. So.
Oh, I love that scene in the documentary when the girl attacks Ron Mayle. Not Russell, Ron. That's the best. Yeah, and it's the girl from the Go-Go's, I think. Yeah, oh, that's great. Yeah,
that is great.
And she's like, "Yeah, that was me."
Yeah. They interview her. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
All right, 27. Are you good at cooking or baking?
Cooking, more so, but I dabble in things. But I only mostly cook for myself. Once in a while, I cook for someone, but I wouldn't trust me, but I can get by.
You have a specialty?
I love Mexican food and eggs, different things. But yeah, I like, different kinds of tacos, from fish tacos to black beans to sometimes something more dangerous.
Well, we love tacos, jalapenos.
Yeah. Everything.
56. What is your favorite animal at the zoo?
At the zoo. It's been a long time. I don't think I've been to the zoo since New Orleans Zoo in the 90s, like mid 90s. And I think we did mushrooms too. Okay. I like the dangerous animals as long as I'm far enough away, it's fascinating. But monkeys and things too are probably the coolest, just for the weird, almost human quality,
I used to take my kids like every week to the Baltimore Zoo, and they have this big enclosure, and it's all apes.
I've been to the Baltimore Zoo back in the day.
And they have that big glass, and you can just watch them.
Yeah.
Well, my kids are little, and this one right out the front is busy, doing what guys do. I didn't know they did that.
Right.
And my son's like, what is he doing? I'm like, he's just itchy. Come on, let's go get ice cream.
Hilarious. Well, yeah, I just thought there was an interview with John Bon Jovi talking about trying to hang out with Michael Jackson after some award show or something, and Michael had Bubbles with him, so Michael sent Bubbles to the Bon Jovi party in lieu of going himself. And I guess Bubbles was like drinking and flirting with the girls and hitting on John Bon Jovi's wife, and so
that's crazy.
They had to send him home.
I always get pissed off when you go to the zoo. Like the tiger's not out, and you're like, "Where's the tiger?" And, "Oh, he's not out." Well, does he know where we paid? I mean,
I know.
Send his ass out here, I didn't pay to look at an empty cage.
It's not much of a zoo thing, but I really enjoy from a distance, again, snakes. I'm fascinated just watching snakes, as long as I don't have to be in contact. And Henry was a snake collector, so we had our moments on the bus with him bringing poisonous snakes onto the bus that he
Oh,
would pick
wow.
up in other states, and he would put them in Tupperware things with rubber bands over them and put them in the bunks in the back. So we're sleeping in the bunks on the bus going, there's poisonous snakes in the back in Tupperware, but
Oh,
one
that's
little
so rock
thing.
and roll. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Very Alice Cooper.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see. 68. What is the first record or CD that you bought with your own money?
Well, again, almost impossible because every time I went to the store with my mom from the time I remember being able to think, she would buy me 45s and I would get, I would get to pick a 45 every time she went to the store. So it was Three Dog Night and Jackson 5 or any solo Beatles, maybe a Beatles reissue. But my mom sent me a birthday thing that she saved from when I was 5, and she got me the Beatles 62 to 66, the red double album. So it's really hard because and my dad was always interested in records, being, a country singer, and he would always buy country records. And for whatever reason, he was smart enough to realize that he liked antiques and things already at that time. And he would go to garage sales and antique places, and he would always bring home stacks of 45s that, someone would sell off. And so I have those memories too of my dad coming home with like a stack of rock and roll 45s, Little Richard, Elvis Presley, Buddy Holly, things like that, and just being obsessed with those. And then every birthday and every Christmas, I would just say, get me records. So it's hard to know. I mean, I'm sure every dime or whatever I ever had, I was trying to find out a way to buy records. And then even going to department stores with my parents, like Sears or Kmart, and they would have like the little cutout section where records were $1.99, and I would flip through those and find a band that I heard of. Oh, the Beach Boys, I've heard of them. But I didn't even care. I would listen to anything. So sorry you asked question 68.
No.
but yeah, and then of course, as I got, by the time I was 10, I was collecting records. And my dad there was a guy that worked with my dad at the Chrysler plant, and he was a country music record collector, and he kind of introduced me to the whole world of original copies, and don't buy a record if it's got scratches on it, and this one's worth this much more money than this one, that kind of stuff. Make sure you put your records in plastic sleeves. So I kind of blame him for that, sickness. But I've just always been a music listener, and there's nothing, I mean, like, tonight it's Friday night, and I'm probably just gonna pull out a stack of records. And I have radio shows on the weekend, so I get to
yeah. I saw your podcast. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, thank you. And that goes really well, and that's a lot of fun because I get to play whatever I want.
I bet your dad would have been proud.
On the email list, I have an email list for my radio show, so you can get the links after they air, and you can listen to them whenever you want to.
Yeah. I was going to say, I bet your dad would be proud that you backed up Emmylou Harris on a tour. That's pretty cool.
Oh, he loved, yeah. My dad's proud about everything. He really is a huge supporter, and every time I put out something new, he really likes the stuff that I'm doing with Phil Jones, and
cool.
He'll just get really into it and start telling me about the certain songs or whatever, and that feels good because he's heard me my whole life, and he's heard the worst and he's heard the best. But yeah, I don't want to embarrass him, but I do remember the very first time that I met Emmylou Harris was at Carnegie Hall. Might have been the second time. Played Carnegie Hall with Daniel Lanois, and Emmylou was there, and my parents came to New York to see that show, and Emmylou walked backstage, and I remember my dad saying to my mom, "That's Emmylou," and he kind of straightened his hair out a little bit. So it's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't know why it's like human nature. When you see a celebrity, you want to run up to them and go, "Do you know that you're Emmylou Harris?" And you have to like stop yourself from doing it.
Yeah. I do it all the time too, especially if it's, I see somebody, or, even I went to the Hollywood Bowl a couple weekends ago for the Jazz Fest because my friend was playing and just hanging out backstage. And Arsenio Hall was the host of the Jazz Fest. And I ended up on the side of the stage watching my friend play. And he was standing right next to me. So I started talking to him. And I was like, wow, Arsenio Hall, you know, just
That's so cool.
I'm
Yeah.
still a celebrity geek. But you know, he was important. I used to watch that show, and he always had good music acts on, and he was
Yeah.
funny. And Coming to America, you know, so I thanked him for the laughs because I think that's
Yeah.
one of the best things you can do is just say thanks to people for entertaining you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I noticed that the vinyl shelf is like a midnight broadcast. Are you a bit of a night owl there?
No, it's super hard. I was given that slot, and I thought it was cool. And sometimes it's kind of like, shit, I got to stay up till midnight tonight. But and then if I'm on tour, sometimes I'll pre-record the show and I'll send them in if I'm going to be on the road, and I'll be on the East Coast, and I know it's coming on at 3, and it's like, well, I can't listen to it. But that's why I started the email thing too, so people can check it out. There even was a time once when I did a pre-record and I stayed up and I turned it on, and I swear I fell asleep in like 5 minutes. But when I'm home, it's cool because, you know, people on Facebook are listening and you get to chat a little bit about what they're hearing and things like that. So no, it's hard. And I probably could talk him into changing it around, but sometimes I just go, well, it's Saturday at midnight. It's kind of cool. Like when I was a kid and Saturday Night Live was coming on at 11:30, I had to make myself stay up, you know. And
Yeah.
these days I can just drink coffee or a Red Bull or something. You know what I do sometimes? This is a funny story, but if it's like 8:30 and I know, like, oh man, it's 3.5 more hours till my show, I'll put on Cops, the TV show, because the adrenaline like keeps me awake.
It makes the time fly.
It's just a waste of time. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
It
Do
also
you
makes
know
me
what
realize.
you have in common with Dot Wiggins?
You know, Dot Wiggin of the Shags. We
No,
interviewed her a couple years ago. Yeah.
no, what's that?
You
Is she-
both are huge Herman Hermits fans.
That's
Oh,
true.
amazing. That's amazing.
She had her dog in her lap. His name is Herman.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. That's great
Yeah.
trivia.
Every musical influence question I asked her, she was like, probably Herman's Hermits. Like
That's
just like
amazing.
her band. Yeah.
Well, here's a funny connection. Michael Jackson, there's like a deposition video or something where he's in court trying to talk about he didn't steal this song, and it comes around to his music collection, and the guy says, "What's in your music collection?" And Michael Jackson says, "What do you mean? Like, what do I listen to?" He's like, "Yeah, what do you listen to?" He goes, "I like Glenn Campbell. I like Herman's Hermits." Herman's Hermits is second on his list. And then, I'm friends with Peter Noon on Facebook. So I, sent him, this was a couple years ago when you couldn't just like send little clips. So I made a DVD of that and I sent it to him. And he was like, "That's so cool that Michael liked my band." So I actually got to pass that information on to Peter Noon. Now I got to tell him about the Shags.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's coming up for you in terms of like projects and things?
Well, I've written a whole new album for Pearl, which will be, under her name. This will be our third album that we've done together, and we're just starting to record those songs. There's a couple singles coming out first. I have a new single and a new video, which I thought was coming out today, but I didn't get it from the management yet, so I'm waiting for that. But I saw it.
I think it'll be on Spotify.
It'll be everywhere. Yeah, yeah.
Do you still
Good.
have all those 45s and stuff from when you were a boy that you asked for?
Some, but I have an even better collection. Like after I worked at Tower Records, I worked at Aaron's Records, which was new and used, and people would trade in collections. So I'm in the middle of Hollywood, getting in the era of everybody dumping their vinyl for CDs.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
That was a great time for that. Yeah.
I got some really great stuff in
I'll
that
bet.
time. I replaced a lot of things, and going back to the very first story about how did I move to LA and all, and was I scared? Well, when 3 days in driving through Texas, there was a huge rainstorm, thunder, lightning rainstorm, and I had records all over the bottom floor of the van and didn't realize that there were rust holes throughout the back
Oh,
of the van.
jeez.
So I lost a ton of my records before I even made it to California. And I remember it was either the next morning after parking at a hotel and going to sleep and then opening the door and going, holy fuck, all my records are fucked. Like
Oh,
all the
great.
covers were just like, stuck together and everything. And I remember taking a shower in that hotel and crying and going, what the fuck am I doing?
I believe it. Yeah.
I hadn't got to,
I can relate. Yeah.
I didn't know, I didn't know what was going to happen next. And I just lost my records and it was too late to turn back. But, there was definitely a tear up moment of like, fuck, so live and learn, right?
So,
and, but in some ways too, that incident helped me realize that everything is replaceable. Anything that I lost in that little record flood, I have way better than I had when I was, 16 or whatever. So it's all good.
One last question I've always wanted to ask you is, well, what do you say when people say rock and roll is dead? What do you say?
I always say they've been trying to kill it forever, so it's really nothing new. And I also, my definition of rock and roll is always different because I just think that's my cat. Hi, bud. He wants attention. You can come up and say hi. I like all kinds of music, and some things I consider rock and roll. Most people probably don't consider rock and roll too, like Harmon's Hermits or something, So I don't know. I keep making rock and roll, and even when I try to do things that are a little different or maybe a little more soulful or a little more songwritery, I still always go back to big rock and roll riffs, and when we did the last Motor Sister record, they asked me for a quote and I said, we just want to make a kick-ass rock and roll record, you know what I mean? And that was all there was to it. So I still believe in it. And once in a while, there's some sounds that I hear that I think is a nice continuation. A lot of the new bands that get put into the category of rock and roll just seem to be a one-sided definition of rock and roll. And maybe it's because their songs aren't as great. Like, just listening to Free, and those songs are incredible. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and the guitar riffs and everything. So some of the bands I just hear kind of like watered down Zeppelin, which I just feel like, well, I just rather would listen to Zeppelin, but it at the same time, I think that at least we have that, and at least that might inspire some kid that sees them and says, I want to pick up a guitar and add some monkeys to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, number one, the Rolling Stones are on tour right now and they're in their 80s. So that's pretty cool. And, other bands that, some bands just really know how to survive, like Def Leppard, or I love Def Leppard, and I love that they still play stadiums. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that makes me feel good about rock and roll. And the guy from Rival Sons, Jay Buchanan, he's a great singer. So there's some promising voices out there. I like the Lemon Twigs, but I don't know if they're kind of rock and roll. I guess they're kind of rock and roll.
Yeah, I'm reading this biography of the guy from the band Stray, the English band Stray.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he's talking about like in 73, 74, when he was when all those great British bands were on the rise. He's like, oh, we all love the American bands so much more. Steely Dan, the Doobie Brothers, we thought America was way better. And it's so funny because we would never think of that,
Right. That's funny.
We think it's all the UK,
Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols, he always says, don't tell anybody. I love Boston. I love Journey. What?
Oh, he's got such great quotes, Steve Jones. Yeah.
Oh, he's amazing.
He's in the documentary.
He is. Yeah. The other one that made me upset in the documentary was Beck. It was like, all the years I played with Sparks, I never saw Beck come around. Like, and then there he is, and nothing against Beck. It was just kind of like, what does
I
Beck
guess
have to
it's
do with
face
this?
recognition. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So,
And Flea is in there too. And I didn't know that Flea was a fan, but Flea proved himself in his interview. Like the things he was saying was like, okay, he knows about
yeah,
Sparks. Like Beck's interview was a little more like, yeah, the brothers are kind of weird, and then like it
yeah.
just seemed like. But
One thing I'm
I'll
glad
be
that
in the
they
next documentary.
I'm glad that there's early records like the Half Nelson stuff. He had
Yeah,
that helium kind of he had that Munchkin voice. I'm glad he dropped that. Like the later
yeah,
records, he kind of got away from that because that's
yeah.
really hard sell to play that stuff for people like the early Sparks.
It is. It is.
Yeah,
I love it, and I
I
was
love it, but
the
it's
first
yeah,
time I
it's
heard it too. I have a funny story about that. When I first got into Sparks, like I said, I was 15, and I saw them on Saturday Night Live, and it was "Angst on My Pants" album,
right.
1982, and I was 14, 1982, and they're weird. But then when I got Kimono My House, I found it used at a record store, and I was like, oh, this is an early Sparks record. I put on This Tiny Big Enough for Both of Us, and I decided to get my headphones out so my family couldn't hear it because I was kind of like, what the fuck is this? And I didn't want to hear my family go, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? So I put
Wow.
headphones on because I just thought this is like weirder than Frank Zappa. And
Yeah.
it still happens. I was just in Canada last month and with Daniel, and we were driving, and our tour manager, we always talk about music, and I was talking about Sparks, and Daniel's sound guy was like, oh, Sparks are amazing, the early stuff is great. And our friend Noel's like, well, let me hear it, and I said, it's one of the weirdest things you're ever going to hear. I played him This Tiny Big Enough for the Both of Us. He was like, this is fucking weird. But he loved it. But it still is kind of like, wow, what is this?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true.
You have such great stories. I think we could have a board game instead of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. We could have 6 degrees of Jim.
Yep.
And
Thanks,
you'd have to
thank
get
you.
them.
I
Have you
mean,
ever thought about writing a book about all your
it's happening. It's happening right now.
Okay.
I've actually written it, and there's a guy that lives 2 streets away from me that has a book publishing place. And pre-COVID, we talked about it. He even titled it "Occupation Rock and Roll." And so I wrote this whole book, and then sent it to Henry Rollins. He read it, and a couple other people read it, and now it's the time for. Just got together with the book guy again, and he's back publishing books again. And he's like, if we wait any longer, and this is going to be like Bob Dylan and the Basement Tapes, like this mythical thing. So my job right now is to read the whole book and kind of So I've started. I put a couple of chapters on the front of my computer, but as soon as I finish that, then it'll be ready to go. And there's it's not my life story. It's kind of like what we've just been doing. I just kind of tell different weird stories that have happened to me. Like I'm sure Mark probably remembers, like had connections with Michael Jackson, like when I worked at Tower. So all that whole Michael Jackson stories, and yeah.
Anyway, it was great catching up with you. Thank you so
Great
much for taking the time.
Thanks, guys. That was fun.
Yeah.
We could talk for hours.
This is the Snaggletooth Rock and Roll Podcast.